Hey everybody, it's Elizabeth. Today I'm going to be doing the 20th century tag. It's a tag where you just list your favorites in the 20th century for every decade, so I'm just going to get into it. For the 1900s, I would have to say that my favorite is the Beatrix Potter stories. I don't have a copy with me, they're packed in a box somewhere, but these are my favorite, mostly because of sentimental value. I remember as a kid, my mom used these books to teach us how to read, and all the characters are animals, and I think that that's part of why I love animals so much, is because of those books and feeling like animals are just as valuable as people. And I think those books really shaped that belief or that value in me. For the 1910s, The Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka. I think this is my favorite because it made me realize that something as out there as someone turning into an insect can have literary value. It's been beaten into us in college that realistic fiction is kind of the only valuable fiction, and I feel like that's really sad that things like fantasy have been kind of cut out of the college curriculum. So The Metamorphosis really shows that something as bizarre as this can have literary merit and can be valuable. For the 1920s, this should not come as a surprise for anyone, but it is The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. This is my favorite of the decade for no other reason than it's awesome. We read this in my sophomore year of high school, and this was one of the books that I was really excited to talk about, and it really made me consider being an English major in college. It's one of those books that that every writer loved. For the 1930s, I also don't have a copy of this one, but it's Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck. This is my favorite of the decade because it's so simply written, but it is so complex at the same time, and I feel like that's something that's really hard to do. So this is one of those books that I really look up to as a writer. It was also a really great book to discuss the significance of the character's actions and the significance of the lack of a name for the female character. Were really striking details in the book that we discussed a lot in my class when I read it. Again, I read this my sophomore year of high school, and it was another one of those books that just really made me love reading and discussing literature. For the 1940s, I have A Tree Grows in Brooklyn by Betty Smith. This one is my favorite, again, for kind of sentimental reasons. This is my mom's favorite book, and it was really interesting to see how much of this book she used to raise us. The main character's name is Francie Nolan, and I haven't asked her to confirm this, but my brother's name is Nolan, and I suspect that she named him after Francie Nolan. This is my favorite because it's a connecting point between my mom and I. For the 1950s, this should also not be a surprise, but I have The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. I've read this twice now. The book always strikes me because I feel like I connect so strongly with Holden, and I feel like he's one of those characters that a lot of people maybe don't want to connect with, but because I've always been one of those bullied kids, or one of the kids that really doesn't fit in anywhere, and this book really resonates with me because of Holden's ability to kind of almost ignore that bullying and kind of be himself regardless of how other people perceive him. So this is my favorite largely because of the character of Holden. For the 1960s, I have The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. This is actually my favorite book of all time because of the character of Esther Greenwood. I feel like this is also one of those kind of characters that people almost don't want to connect with or don't want to relate to, but I feel like she is me to a T. Besides the whole attempting suicide in a hole in the basement, that's not me. Her kind of quiet ambition and her struggles mentally, I really connected with those, and also Sylvia Plath's style is really amazing. Her style is really simplistic, and there are so many just really profound and striking sentences that you almost don't realize are profound and striking when you're reading them. You get to the end of the sentence and you're like, wow, that was really amazing. This is one of the books that I personally really look up to as a writer. For the 1970s, this is again one that I don't have a copy of, but it's Carrie by Stephen King. You can probably guess why based on why I liked the other ones. But I also connected with Carrie as a character, again because of the whole bullying situation that I always faced. I really enjoyed the whole, but I think everyone kind of enjoys that revenge scene at the end. I'm sure you all know what it is by now. I feel like that's something that everyone wants, is to get back at people who've hurt them. Yeah, it's just a really great and entertaining book. For the 1980s, I have The Unbearable Lightness of Being by Milan Kundera. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. This is the #1 book that inspires me and that I aspire to as a writer. It's my goal and my aspiration to be compared to this novel and this writer. It's just so intensely emotional and heartbreaking, but without really trying to, and that's kind of also my goal, is to write something that's really emotionally profound and poignant. And lastly, for the 1990s, this was a really hard decade to pick a favorite for because so many great novels came out in the 1990s, but I finally decided on The God of Small Things by Arundhati Roy. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly either. But I didn't like this one at first. When I started reading it, I thought it was really slow and they just went into details that I didn't really care about. But by the end of the book, I was just in love with it, and I wrote an essay on it, as you can tell by these lovely orange quote flags. But there was just so much in this book to think about. It's one of those books that makes you question the ideas of family, tradition, culture, all those kinds of things, and I love books that make you question things like that. So this is my favorite of the decade because it was one of the most intelligently written books that I've ever read. So I hope you guys liked that video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!